enough to give us a shout out. Hello, Afri.
Hey, buddy.
Are you currently muted, but he has access to unmute? Okay, you're unmuted.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hello, we're doing well.
Okay, we ready to record? We going?
I'm going.
You ready, Lambo?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 6th ETH Stakers community call. We are a community of Ethereum 2 stakers, and we're generally based at github.com/r/ETHstaker. We hold these community calls every 2 weeks and just try to find out what's going on in the Ethereum ecosystem. Today we have an exciting guest, Afri Schoedon. And let's see, before we get started, we're going to do a couple of introductory things. I'd like to introduce my co-host is Lamboshi, aka Nolan. And Nolan, do you have anything special to say?
Thanks for coming on, Afri. We appreciate it. You can follow him on Twitter at A4FRI. And you can follow us at ETH2 SCC.
Great, thank you. Ben Edgington, I'm so glad you're here because I just love your newsletter. So I want to give you that real quick. Patricia, do you want to share a little bit about the POAPs?
We have some little info. So I think most of those in the call already got POAPs, so I don't need to explain you much what it does or how it's important to get it. The announcement is that we are deploying new mechanisms for the claiming process. And this time you may have the opportunity to pay for your own mining fee, which is something we really needed for sustainability because we couldn't afford paying all the minting fees of everyone in the whole event that have POAP. So bear with us if something doesn't work nicely. If it does work nicely, also let us know. And in any case, I'm very open to feedback of all sorts. And that's pretty much it. You will be getting a private message from the user Butta, B-U-T-T-A. And if by the end of the call you didn't get the message with the POAP claiming link, just put it on the chat and we will make sure you get it. And I think that's it. And I think it's Afri's time.
Okay, so we're going to get rocking and rolling. For anybody who hasn't seen this call before, it lasts about an hour. The general idea is just to let our guests tell us where they're coming from. I do have a bunch of questions, but more importantly than the questions, we just want to find out what's on Afri's mind. So, hey, Afri, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you're one of the I think one of the most interesting people in the entire space, and so it's super exciting to figure out how you tick. So to begin, would you just tell us a little bit about where you come from, so maybe your background, and how you wound up dealing with blockchain technology?
Yeah, sure, I can certainly do that. But first I want to know why Butta is laughing.
Oh, he's working on sending POAPs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me. I'm Afri. I'm some kind of long-term member of the Ethereum community. I've been spending a couple of years working unprofessionally and professionally in crypto. My background is I used to study applied computer sciences. I have some degrees in computer sciences. I was specialized on computer graphic systems and geographic visualization. But eventually I had a very good offer for a PhD, and but I at some point decided to go full time into crypto, and this is when I joined Parity 3 years ago. That's my background. I don't know. I can go into details, but you have to tell me what you want to know.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people began with Bitcoin and migrated to Ethereum. And I also know that you have more than most of us. I don't know that you would be described as an Ethereum maximalist. Like I definitely describe myself as an Ethereum maximalist, but I see that, you have a lot of different interests. Did you begin with Bitcoin and migrate, or did you find some other foothold in?
Yeah, and I mean, I started with Bitcoin, like a lot of people did. I had a friend in around 2012, 2013, telling me, like, sending me links, look, this is Bitcoin, this is interesting, don't you think? And I was like, just hand waving, as whatever, I just didn't care about, or just, it was some kind of major news outlets covering Bitcoin, and they somehow failed to make me interested in this space. And this all changed suddenly when I was reading this book, Cypherpunks, which is written as a dialogue between Julian Assange, Jake Applebaum, who else in this book? It's like 4 people, and they had an entire chapter on Bitcoin, and it was like, I was so sucked into it, like right from the start, because reading this from this perspective, I completely understood this potential impact on financial system, on society in general. And I was reading this on my summer vacation, and I came home and booted up my workstation at home and just tried to figure out what the fuck is going on. This is how I got into Bitcoin, and this is how I eventually never left. And yeah, I'm not a maximalist. I still use Bitcoin as of today, sometimes, not often, but I'm still, it's also maybe good to honor this inheritance. It's most of us are coming from Bitcoin, and probably Ethereum wouldn't be around if we didn't have Bitcoin in the early days. So I still believe Bitcoin has an important place in the world, and Ethereum also does, but there's enough space for all the coins.
Now, one of the things I admire about you is you have not focused on one specific thing. Like the more time I spend looking and reading and researching, the more I focus on Ethereum because it seems to solve the things I'm interested in. But I really wish that I had the mental ability to zoom out and maintain a perspective on the value that other projects bring. And I personally struggle with that. So I think it's neat that you walk that fine line of being interested in several things and continuing to investigate them without being locked in. There's people ask about your username, and you use, I think it's QFM, I think. Is that, it's Q9F and Q9FM. Yes. People are curious about where that comes from.
That's pure random.
Just random?
Oh. No, it's I used to I mean, I'm coming from a strong aware background. I always try to focus on privacy. I always try to focus on security, and I used to just, I mean, in a general rule of thumb, you should like use different usernames on all platforms and across the internet, and like just try to obfuscate your profile. And I was kind of lazy doing this, so I did this like every January, every New Year's Eve. I just came up with a new identity, and I started building a new identity from scratch. And I mean, now that I'm in this space professionally, of course everyone knows that's me, but I just keep still iterating my usernames. It's just kind of, I just kind of a habit.
Is it hard for you? Like I'm stuck on this username. Like I used to rotate every 3 months I would switch usernames, and now I'm stuck with this one because I have a recognizable identity. Do you struggle with, like, the anonymity is nice when you can go and say something and people judge it based on the quality of your words rather than your personality. Do you miss having that anonymity?
It comes with advantages. It comes with disadvantages. I certainly, it's quite interesting what you said. It's interesting because if I post something and people don't recognize it's me, then they react completely differently than if they would knew that it's me, because it's this implied authority. I don't think I have a lot of authority, but because I'm in the space so long, there's like some natural like natural authority that people give my words, even though I don't feel like very privileged in this regard. And it's interesting to see whenever this happens that I switch to a new Reddit account or something, like people react totally differently. And this is interesting, certainly.
Yeah, that was, I noticed that. And one of the things I want to do is not go too much into the past, but I noticed a shift in the way that your account was regarded on Reddit between what was going on several months ago and then what's going on, or, you know, the current. So I know that it's not just you seeing that, because I've observed it as well. So moving on to what you actually contribute. And before I characterize that, would you tell us how you describe your role? Like, I think of you as a testnet coordinator. What do you see as your role in Ethereum?
Exactly that.
Okay.
I've been doing testnets for a while now. The background here is that I met with Aiden, a friend at ChainSafe in Toronto 2 years ago, and we were like having a long walk in the park, and we were discussing this problem in Ethereum, that there is like this one testnet for guest client, there's one testnet for parity client, and then there's this proof of work testnet that works on all client, but it's so unreliable that there is kind of the situation in the testing environment for applications that there needs to be something done. And then we had in the same summer this East Berlin coming up, and we decided we give it a try. And I mean, this was the story, and we went to East Berlin. We tried to hack the Aura proof of authority engine into guess, I believe. We broke certain hackathon rules. We were disqualified. First we won the hackathon, then we were disqualified. But this idea lived on, and eventually we managed to launch the Girly testnet, which is today and I'm really proud that we didn't give up back then, and that we managed to fulfill this vision of having this cross-client testnet, one testnet for all clients. And it was really beneficial that Pegasus was launching the BSU client back then, and that Nethermind was also interested in just joining this new effort right from the start. So we had, in a short amount of time, 4 or 5 clients working on this new client together, testnet together. And ever since, I figured that Ethereum 1 was in a good position, and I moved on to ETH2 and I just reached out to Danny and asked, hey, what do you think? I have some spare time now. What about myself, with my free time, investigating a potential of Ethereum 2 testnets? And he said, Afri, that's the perfect timing, because we just need to get there, and we need someone, because, you know, developers are going to develop, researchers going to research, but sometimes you need the man in the middle that just holds all the loose ends and tries to just put them together in a way. And that was a challenge I really liked to take up. And I mean, in the end, the code is there, the clients are there. So all I did is basically just reading documentation whenever available, and putting clients together.
So this is just because I'm naive, and I think other people may understand this better than I do, is launching. So I get the POA, the Girly testnet launching. Yeah. That makes sense to me. But as far as launching an ETH2 testnet, are you basically creating a configuration and distributing that for adoption, and the clients? Well, can you tell me how you create an ETH2 testnet?
Yeah, I've actually, so to learn how this works out, because I'm not an expert in Ethereum 2 specification, and I had to learn all this myself too over the recent months. What I did first was like going on Stack Exchange and like just asking dumb questions, and people patiently answered that, because we have the specification, but there's not much documentation about this process. And in the end, when I figured out all these pieces, I wrote this blog article, how to run your own beacon chain, because I believe it's some kind of interesting process, putting all these pieces together. And it's 4 steps. The first one is you need the Genesis contract. So you need this interface between ETH1 and ETH2. So naturally, I keep deploying Genesis contracts, deposit contracts to Girly testnet. And then you can configure a lot of, so the second step is that you need chain specification for the ETH2 beacon chain, where you have a lot of constants and variables in there that basically define the behavior and genesis of this chain. And the deposit contract on ETH2 and this chain configuration in the ETH2 clients, this basically defines how this chain will be launched, and the client just picks this up. They read the deposit contract, they read the deposits, they decide, are these deposits valid? And once there's a threshold met of minimum deposits, they decide, okay, this looks like a Genesis event, and then decide that there's like an algorithm that decides the time. And then they print out a timestamp and say, this is our Genesis time, this is our Genesis route, and that's it basically. So taking this, we basically have everything to launch an ETH2 mainnet. What's just missing is that we need a lot more testing. So I don't know, I don't know, maybe it was Danny making this joke. You could launch my own mainnet now. Yeah, so I mean, if you were to
let's do it.
Yeah, just put a deposit contract on mainnet.
So I know somebody was you just posted on Twitter a couple hours ago that you would give dates if you were asked, and so Afri, what dates can you offer us?
I was
and I don't know the answer. I wanted to throw that out there and see what you'd give us.
I was provoking this question, yes, because I will certainly not give dates. And,
I was like,
and my entire point of this is that I also don't think it's beneficial to give dates. It's just not good to go out and say it's January the 3rd or go out and say it's July, because there needs to be certain boxes checked, certain milestones met, and certain tests be done before we go for a mainnet launch. And if you want to, I can walk you through everything that's missing for mainnet launch, and then if you take a pen and paper, you can do your math on your own, but I will not just come up with a date, and because this will be just confusing. People will blame me for either delaying stuff or for coming up with dates that are not accurate.
It's funny, I feel trolled now because I would not have dared ask you about dates, except you said ask about dates, and I'm like, well, why not?
No, I certainly want to talk about. Sure, I certainly want to talk about roadmap, but I don't want to say it's October the 19th.
Well, and that would be unfair.
Oh, there's the quote right there.
Yeah, October.
October 19th,
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah, there'll be an article. So why don't you answer that question? Elaborate on the question in a way that you feel like is informative then. How's that?
Yeah, tell us what boxes need to be checked.
Okay, so my work on testnet specifically is important for the roadmap because having this multi-client testnet stage entered now is basically the last stage before we can consider a mainnet launch. So what I've done in April was launching this Schlesi testnet, which had 2 clients. I actually launched a testnet before that in March with, I didn't even have a name, with Teku and Lighthouse. Then there was a new version of the spec, and I launched the Schlesi testnet in April with Lighthouse and Prism in Genesis. So that was an interesting milestone because this was, so the first one was basically just connecting one node to a running testnet, but the Schlesi testnet was the first one that actually had 2 different clients as Genesis validators. So it was basically, it will fail completely or it will survive, and surprisingly it survived. And I mean, there were some rough bugs in the beginning, but the client teams were really helpful and really cooperative and fixing bugs in such an amazing fast response time. So this happened in April, and then we just had this week the Witty testnet, which had 3 clients in Genesis. So we have Teku, Lighthouse, and Prism now starting right at Genesis. So this basically shows that we have roughly everything we need to have or working towards a stable mainnet-like testnet. So what's next is basically seeing that this testnet, the Witty testnet, is stable enough to move on to new testnets. There's one roadblock that we still have a small version bump in the spec. So there are some minor changes that need to be implemented across the clients. This, once is done, this will happen within the next weeks, I believe. So we have beginning of June now. So this will happen this month, certainly, and probably the most important clients will have releases out there with this new version of the spec, and then we will do the same thing again. We will once again create a DevNet with at least 3 validators in Genesis. We will maybe have 4, maybe another client is able to join. I don't know this yet, but 3 is enough for now. So if we can do another release with 3 clients, it would be nice. And this will once again show us how stable the clients are. And if this works out, and then we are at the point where we say we go to this, and this is what users often ask me about, this official multi-client testnets. I mean, I don't like this term official, but there will be, what it will be is more user-facing. So Witty is more a developer network where enthusiasts and developers can try to break it, but it's not like everyone should be encouraged to waste their girly ether on this testnet. And eventually, after June, or after we successfully tested the .12 version of the spec, we might be able to launch this official version of the testnet. And then we are in this official stage. I always say this in this quote. Then we are getting ready for mainnet, basically, because if this runs stable enough, if we can prove that this is running with tens of thousands of validators, at least 3 major clients, and is stable, and we don't find any networking issues, consensus issues, or like any major hiccups, then when we can consider moving on to do this long process of a mainnet launch, which involves a Genesis event, which needs to be introduced through an official or like officially recognized deposit contract ceremony, because everyone has to agree that this deposit contract is the one we are going to use, and this will probably involve getting a lot of high reputation people on the table. I don't know, I have no idea how this would work, but this is how I envision it. You know, it's like a real ceremony. Is that going to be
a physical event? I wondered if that was going to be a physical or a like video conference event. I guess the girly launch was a physical event, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was.
Because I saw that.
Yeah, that was fun. That we seized the moment because we had this conference here in Berlin, and we just, yeah, that was nice. But it doesn't have to be certainly a physical event, because it's just not much magic around it involved. It's more like, I don't know, honestly. I know it's Carl from the Ethereum Foundation who's working on this official deposit contract ceremonies part. I don't know exactly what this will entail, but it will be some kind of way to prove that this is the contract everyone should be using.
Yeah.
And once
the reason I'm
sorry,
the reason I ask that is the in-person meetings are neat from a social perspective. Like, everyone likes to see and take pictures, but they are less effective from a technological perspective because people aren't doing the thing they want to do, which is sitting behind their keyboard and verifying that that's the correct contract and sending transactions. So it seems almost like a conflicting interest, because it, on one hand, the in-person has a lot of benefit, but the behind the keyboard also has its own benefits. So I was curious how it would wind up.
Yeah, I mean, you can also meet physically and still have a keyboard. For the girly launch, it was kind of cheating because we only had one authority, and I was pressing a button on my keyboard, and this red button thing was all fake because it didn't work out.
Give me just a minute. I've been paying attention. I want to see what are the things people were interested. I'm distracted by my toddler, so I miss a lot as we're progressing, and I know that Slushy. Say that for me, please. Slushy. Sleazy. Thank you. Sleazy ended, and it was my assumption that subsequent test nets would also be called Sleazy. We switched to Witty. Is Witty going to be iterated or as Witty 1, Witty 2, Witty 3, or will we rename the testnet as we progress from there?
Yeah, I didn't really come up with a strategy on naming when I launched this, but I figured out it's good to have a name because when you publish configurations, it's good to have just some kind of string to text this. And eventually, when Schlesi failed, it was still up. I just shut down my last validator 2 days ago, so we had already really up and running when Schlesi was still technically still running, so it was good to just come up with a new name. And I believe in future, if we iterate testnets, we will just jump from subway station to subway station. I'm open for suggestions.
Which clients are currently at version 0.12?
I actually don't know that.
Okay.
I've seen development branches that had this name in it, but I didn't see. I'm not aware of any official releases or. But this is something I will try to find out soon. Because once we have 2 or 3 clients ready, we will certainly start having a new testnet.
Do you have an opinion on the 2 or 3 clients for mainnet Genesis and or like the 2 or 3 months for how long the testnet has to run before it's certified for release? I know there's some sort of a debate there.
You mean my opinion on the numbers?
Yes, your opinion.
Yeah, of course. So having more clients is a crucial part of the Ethereum philosophy, I believe. And I believe that Ethereum 1 was successful because they did not go this Bitcoin path, that there should be only one consensus implementation. And I believe it's so many benefits having a lot of clients, so I would argue for 3 clients. And so far, the Schlesi and Witty testing showed that we have at least 3 clients that can check these boxes for mainnet launch. And I believe it's not too much asked to say we should go for 3 clients. On the timing, I mean, I'm coming from a software development background, and I prefer more conservative timelines, and we could do 2 months, but I believe 3 months would be more secure. Because this could also give us time to not only test this testnet and Genesis and like setting up validators, but it could also test. We were enabled to test long-term maintenance, client release cycles. What to do if we had to, I don't know, bump protocol version or what hard forks. You know, we had some time to actually play around on the testnet for a longer time. And I believe we should go for 3 clients in 3 months, but this said, also does not mean that this entire mainnet release process should be sequential. So we could also do a mainnet deposit contract ceremony way before being done testing on testnet. You know what I mean? So this does not certainly mean that having 1 more month of testing on the testnet does not certainly delay this process 1 more month, unless we find some issues. You know, so we could just so we could have this Genesis contract. Jesus, this deposit contract ceremony at some point and say this deposit, and then we say a minimum Genesis time at day X, and then we know we have like another 30 days till this day X is happening. And in case in these 30 days there's something happening on the testnet, we can just bump this minimum genesis time for another 30 days. So we have this buffer of time. So you know what I mean? So this is, I would always advise for more and longer testing, but this does not certainly mean that this will be much delaying the entire mainnet process. And there's also, yes?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, yeah, I just realized that we didn't finish talking about the road mapping in general, because once you have this deposit contract deployed to Ethereum mainnet, Ethereum 1 mainnet, then we still need the 16,000 validator deposits. So this is also something that will not happen within 1 or 2 days. Maybe it will, but I believe this might take some weeks to ramp up. This will also add some time to the clock of launching Ethereum 2 beacon chain.
Do you experience the pressure to ship? I know that is, at least from the community, like as we're watching chains develop, as we're watching technology, you know, things are moving very quickly. Do you experience the pressure to get a product shipped, or do you feel like comfortable in, and I guess maybe that's one of the things that's come up, like your comfort with iterative testing is a greater comfort zone than most people or many people who are more focused on shipping? Do you see a thing there?
I mean, I sometimes roam Reddit, and I sometimes get mentioned on Twitter, and there's some kind of pressure. Some people are rude, but some people are like understanding. And I mean, I have some kind of history being more conservative in terms of putting out times. And I've been also, I think I was attacked for like calling out like this Constantinople art for being moved from November to January, which was not my decision, but what was merely my observation. And after all these years in Ethereum, I think I can deal with this to some degree, and I believe the tech is more important and proper testing is more important than giving into the pressure to ship. So yeah.
I think that's a wise perspective. I just like, I constantly feel the pressure for the community to be in Ethereum 2, while I recognize the need for developers to do solid work, but they're competing in my mind. I've been curious to know how that works for you. It's obviously more important that the tech is right. So one of the things we're worrying about, have you seen attacks on Witty? Do you monitor that? And I hope it's okay if I shift gears like that. Do you monitor Witty on an ongoing basis? Have you seen any not bugs in the spec, but attacks or attempted attacks from other users?
Yes. So, but I'm not an expert on this. So I've seen that some users are doing double voting and they are getting slashed for it. And I keep using the Beacon Chain Explorer to just monitor the slasher tab, for instance, where I see active slashing in the past. But this is not my core focus is more on the client side, less on the protocol side, because I know we have a lot of eyes on this testnet because it's very interesting for both researchers and developers. What I'm doing is making sure that clients do what they are supposed to do. I just had one of my validators going down yesterday, and I keep having tabs on all of this, and I keep working closely together with the client teams, submitting bug reports, submitting logs, trying to figure out how to patch notes, how to keep the network alive. And yeah, so I know that other people are testing this, but I'm not deep into that.
So your focus is on looking for correct submissions rather than looking for attack vectors. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I have to admit, I haven't launched a validator on Schlessie, Witty. And I think that the barrier to hopping on these dev test nets is maybe more than some people are willing to tackle. Are you interested in improving access to Witty, or
Not at all.
Okay, so as a dev test net, it's something that the smaller and more efficient, the leaner, the better. Is that where we're at?
It's clearly, if you dive down into the documentation and you figure out how to run a validator on Witty, then you're more than welcome to do so. But if you can't figure this out yet, then it's just not your time yet. So because this is a DevNet, it will be fast failing, and we might be launching a new testnet every week or on every bug we find. So it's basically just blowing out and wasting early ETH. There will be, whenever, this is coming again, an official testnet, this will have much more features for end users, which makes making deposits more easy, running validators more convenient, and so this is not a focus for Witty. I know people are working on UX side, but this is we are just not there yet.
So in terms of something like Prismatic's testnet Topaz versus Witty, it appears that their goals are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Topaz, will you explain that rather than me trying to characterize it?
Yeah, sure. So Topaz is a single client testnet. This is the only client that can run this testnet and can run validators on this testnet is the Prism client. And it was launched initially by 16,000 Genesis validator, I believe, hosted by Prismatic Labs. And then they made a blog post announcing it, and they launched a website where you can create deposits and stuff. And this is clearly the goal of mass testing Prism, the Prism client, to test how easy it is to onboard people to the beacon chain. What are the pain points of making deposits and running validators, and it clearly serves a purpose for the Prismatic Labs team, for the Prism client. But the scope of the multi-client testnet is entirely different, and it's more like trying to make these things work together. And once this all works together, then these websites of this deposit website from Topaz that could work on a multi-client testnet in the future. The underlying tech is the same. It's just the nuances and protocol do not allow us to add other nodes to the Topaz testnet. And also on Schlessie, we had like 400 validators. On Witty, we have 700 now. And on Topaz, I don't know, 30,000. I didn't check the latest numbers, but it's just different scale. And if we were to release Witty in a way we released Topaz, then we would have a lot of influx of validators. And there's this issue that there's no incentive to keep this testnet alive. So there might be this problem that if too many people just deposit early ETH into the contract and do not sufficiently maintain their validators, and the network might die just from lack of incentive. And I know it works out for Topaz right now, but for the smaller testnets like Witty or Schlessie, we cannot risk this right now, and the focus is entirely different.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like some of the questions I'm asking are not questions of your specialty, but you're so broadly knowledgeable that I'm just curious to ask you. Would you have any ideas about whether an incentivized version of the multi-client testnet would fly or would work, or is that something that would be counterproductive in some way? So as incentivized, I mean, obviously getting paid ETH to, not that anybody has a stash. Well, I mean, ETH2, because it hasn't been Genesis. yeah, I'll just let you take that and flush it or whatever.
Yes, I mean, the idea is out there for a while. I know other projects outside of the Ethereum space have done this before. Right now, I'm unsure we really need an incentivized testnet.
Because the benefits are not.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I don't see the benefits outweighing the issues that come with incentivization. And I also believe the Ethereum community is enthusiastic enough to keep testnets alive without incentivization. So I don't want to say that we will not see incentivized testnets for Ethereum 2, but right now it's not my focus, and I also did not do enough research to like properly answer this question and how this could look like.
So I love that you maintain scope, and because I've maybe asked a couple questions that are outside of your scope, and I love how you maintain scope. Are there things inside of your scope maybe that you're thinking, or questions inside your scope that you would just like to share with us that I haven't breached?
I don't know.
You're like, that's your job. That's my job. Well, so Phil ETH has asked about the safety of deposits on the Beacon chain. So if the Beacon chain fails after the deposit contract has been launched, what happens to those deposits within the Beacon chain? And I have my idea, but I guess I'll go ahead and let you address that.
So first of all, I'm always advising to do a lot of testing, long and proper testing, so we will eventually not fail the Beacon chain test mainnet. But in case it happens and it's not recoverable, and there's like no way to fix this Beacon chain, we could just discard it and launch a new Beacon chain with the same deposit contract. Unless there's an issue with the deposit contract, which I hope there isn't. But so the thing is, if you have the deposit contract on ETH and you have like 100,000 deposits already, and you already have like a progressed ETH2 Beacon chain and this fails, we could just degrade this Beacon chain to a testnet, which would be very unfortunate because people would have invested money to do staking on it, but to avoid that they lose their entire ETH2 deposits, we could just reuse the same deposit contract, use the same deposits and start a new Beacon chain with a different gang this time. It's just one option. This would be like, so people would not lose their investment or like their deposits, but they might lose some money on staking infrastructure. So yeah, I don't know if it makes sense.
No, yeah, that does. Do you plan to stake Ethereum when the network goes live? Or is this an exercise in test nets for you, or do you think that like you're going to run validators for the long haul?
I certainly will run validators, sure.
Cool.
Do you have a favorite client? At the risk of offending somebody, maybe?
What do you think is most confusing about people who are new to Ethereum 2?
That's two questions. Yes, of course, I have a favorite client. I don't want to offend anyone, but we have a lot of Ethereum 2 clients, which is kind of interesting to see, and they are in different stages of development, and so it's hard to compare them. It's kind of apples and oranges problem here, but I find it personally very comfortable working with the Lighthouse client. I also figured out that contributing to the Lighthouse client is easier than contributing to other clients. I'm also really impressed by the work of the Teco team, which is incredible in such a short time to build clients that's able to participate in the testnets. I do see some potential in the Prism client, but I have my problems running it, and this is I don't want to offend anyone, and I will be honest and transparent about it. And I also communicated this to the team already in certain occurrences, and I also participated in their recent developer survey, so they are probably aware.
My internet popped out, or my network screeched to a crawl, and I got a screen freeze when you. What was the last client that you mentioned that you said you were having difficulty with?
Prism.
Oh, okay. And that's the one that I've spent the most time with. But I did have a similar experience with Lighthouse being very easy to get up and running. What has been your experience with Nimbus? I mean, I'm not looking. I'm not here to air dirty laundry. I'm just curious from your perspective. If I'm not encouraging you to say something, that.
So there's just so much bandwidth that one person has to test clients, and actually adding each client I add to testnets is like increasing the complexity exponentially. And Nimbus was always very high up on my list because I really wanted to figure out. I was also curious about the language, and I know the team has been busy for a while, but I barely managed to run a Nimbus node on Schlesi, and I know it almost did the job, but I don't have enough data to do an evaluation of the client yet.
Yeah, it seemed to me, at least from I forgot what they called the lock-in a few months ago. It seemed that Nimbus was humming along, and I ran it on Android and was very surprised that it was easy to get up and running. I just didn't know how compatible it was with Witty. But if there are difficulty with the clients, that's generally a client level modification there, right? Because we assume that the network configuration. So we assume that Witty is correct, and that if clients aren't communicating correctly with that it's a client failure. Is that correct?
Yes. What's the context of this question? So what do you mean?
Just understanding. So take, for example, the differences between Topaz and Witty. They both use a mainnet configuration. If one of, and Nimbus wanted to connect to one of them, just saying hypothetically, if Nimbus failed to connect, we would assume then that it was a difficulty with the Nimbus client and not some kind of difficulty with the chain configuration. Is that?
Yeah, so here's the thing. If you only have one client, then you don't really have certainty that your specification is implemented correctly. And so we have this situation on the Topaz testnet that there is a minor consensus affecting bug, which does not allow other clients to connect to it, which means that technically other clients could connect to it if they were to specifically implement this bug in their client. And the difference to Witty is that having 3 clients at Genesis, you always have to ensure that all clients are aligned to the spec. So if one client fails, then there will be certainly only this one client dropping out, and this one client has to be fixed to rejoin the other clients according to the spec. And if you only have one as a single client testnet, then it's more difficult to discover consensus bugs, and it's not certainly an issue of the other client adding to it, but maybe might be also the issue of the first client initially bootstrapping the network.
So what I'm gathering is if you begin, and this seems to be what's happening with Schlesi and Witty, is that you're adding them one at a time, because if you have a stable testnet with 2 and things look fine, then you add a third, then you have a fair idea that the third one would be causing the trouble. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
No. So
okay.
you try to launch with all clients at the same time. That's why there's so much complexity involved, and that's why there's probably not happening that there will be more than 3 clients at Genesis in future testnets.
Okay.
So Joseph C. wondering, will a multi-client consensus failure and recovery be tested on a multi-client testnet? So I guess he means a hard fork, I think.
Yes, Hi, Joseph. We have been discussing this before. So his question, so his context is that we had this multiple failures on Schlesi that lead to chain split and then losing finality, and we were unable to recover it. And the question is, what if this was mainnet? And what are we going to do to ensure that this will not happen on mainnet? And the short answer is that there is simply no incentive to recover these short failing testnets, because I do a lot of deposits on Girly. I'm a bit sloppy with key management because I know these keys are these Girly is worth 0, and at some point, for example, Lighthouse client upgraded the way they store private keys, and I had to manually remove some kind of padding in the private key or file, and I messed up somehow, and then I lost keys. And this is a way where this is something that you would never do on mainnet, because you have like at least 3 backups of everything and everywhere, and even your grandma has them, and she doesn't even know about it. And so the question is kind of tricky, because of course you want to test this, but this might be a good use case for an incentivized testnet, because it's so much easier to just throw away the old keys, throw away the old configurations, and start a new testnet and hope that you will not break it again.
Okay. Do you have any, Joseph C's also asking about protecting and mitigating denial of service attacks. Is that something you can speak on?
Would be curious what kind of denial of service attack, like on denial of what service, like on networking level or on?
I assume so, yes.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on networking.
Okay, fair enough. I think we've hit most of our questions in the chat. Patricio, where are we at on the POAP thing?
So we run into some unexpected issues, sadly. We will fix them, and the codes you were given are going to be working, so keep them safe. As soon as the call finishes, the chat on Zoom disappears, so make sure you take it out of it, and we will announce it on the each taker's Discord when it's fixed, hopefully soon. And in every case, you just keep the link. Maybe on next month's call, you can claim both at once, or we do something. I also kept a list of every member on the call, so if for whatever reason you even lost the code or something, we will make sure you still get it. It could be important to get this code because we are working with some organizations in the ecosystem to give some benefits to people attending these sort of community events, especially on something as important as staking, because the more different entities staking, the better for the network. So it could happen that because you got these POAPs and previous POAPs and upcoming POAPs, then you get some sort of discount or something, or early access to whatever, or prioritize tech support. So please keep the POAP safe and bear with us until we fix the issue that is preventing us for claiming them.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for supporting the POAPs. Like it's kind of a new thing. Do you use these, Afri? Have you checked them out? The POAPs?
Yeah, I'm a power user. I'm a big fan. It has a lot of potential.
Yeah,
I still have to follow up with Patricio because I'm missing some.
Now that's the reason you came here today, isn't it? You wanted to get your POAP.
Yeah,
sure. Thanks again to Patricio for running those. Afri, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you want to get off your mind for us?
Yeah, be nice to each other.
Great, thank you.
We'll do our best. Thank you for coming out, Afri. We appreciate it.
I'm so appreciative. It's been a great call. I enjoyed the time with you. I have trouble attending now, but I'm looking forward to rewatching the call and hearing it for the first time. Buddha, thank you for handing out those POAPs, and I guess hopefully we'll be able to claim them soon. Thanks to everyone for coming, and it doesn't do any good to tell you all this, but this will be up on YouTube soon and posted to reddit.com/r/ETHstaker. So thanks everyone.
Thanks,
I
guys.
think we can invite everyone to our next non-guest call where we will be testing the new remote software. So I think you can explain them in a minute what the plan is.
Yeah. Okay. So I love the the bi-weekly calls. But I've been interested in a new platform called Remo.co. What I haven't wanted to do is invite a guest while we're testing that platform. So if we invited Afri today and everything crashed and burned, it would be disrespectful to his knowledge for us to spend all of our time scrambling. So the next call is not going to involve any guest. But we're going to switch to the Remo platform and try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we can always come back here or try something different. So in 2 weeks, we're going to meet up. The Remo platform has 2 features. It has this, which is fine, but then you can also switch gears into a small group meeting room where you can bounce around and meet other people. JT and I, JT Nickel from eFinance, I almost said the other site, from eFinance, and I spent a while visiting there. It was just the neatest little small group, individual meeting conference space kind of thing, virtually. It actually shows you the floor plan of a hotel lobby, and you choose which seat you want to sit in, and you're with other people, and you're in a small conference room where you have a video chat with them, just kind of learning how other people think and what they think of what's going on. So that's the plan for the next call. Any other business we have? Okay. Thanks, everyone.
For me. Thanks for coming out, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
good one.
Thanks, everyone else. All right.
Bye.
Take care.